At dawn, the windows here bleed gold onto the bed sheets, like God trying to comfort something he cannot reach. The walls hold the sighs of families, too tired to cry, too numb to feel. You'd think the palliative care wing would be louder, more grief, more voices, more pleading, but it's not. It's quiet, too quiet, like a place that knows it's been left behind by the living. Room 402 faces east. The sun always finds it first, and yet it's always the coldest room on the floor. My name is Father Ellery. I'm 64. I've been the hospital chaplain here for 23 years. I've held hands as heartbeats stopped. I've whispered last rites into ears already turning cold. I've seen enough death to lose count, but I still remember the names of the ones who held on too long, the ones who seemed afraid of what came next, not because they feared hell, but because they knew something was waiting, something that didn't look like heaven. I never used to believe in ghosts, not in the way others meant it. I believed in lingering pain, in unfinished business, in souls aching for forgiveness, but not in shadows, not in voices, not in whatever it is I encountered in room 402. It started 5 months ago. I was called in for a woman named Margaret, 82, pancreatic cancer, DNR in place. Family had flown in from out of state. She'd slipped into a coma the night before and wasn't expected to last the day. I came in around 7, just after sunrise. The room was empty, except for her. The nurse said her daughter had stepped out for coffee. I remember standing at the foot of the bed, watching her chest rise and fall in that slow, mechanical way, the body clinging even as the soul readies to depart. I uncapped the oil, began the prayer, and then she opened her eyes. She didn't look at me. Her gaze slid past me, over my shoulder, and fixed somewhere near the far wall. Her lips moved, silent, dry but insistent. I leaned in, thinking she was trying to speak, but the sound that came out wasn't for me. It wasn't even a word. It was more like a whimper, a terrified exhale, and then she died. I told myself it was coincidence. Some dying patients do that. One last surge of energy, a muscle twitch, a burst of clarity, but I couldn't shake the way she looked. Not at me, but through me, like something had entered the room, and I wasn't who she hoped it would be. 2 weeks later, another patient. A man this time, Walter, liver failure, same room, same circumstances. And again during the prayer, he stirred. His eyelids fluttered, and he muttered something. He said he's in the walls. That was the first time I felt it, the pressure, like the room inhaled all at once. The air got heavier. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from an almost electric wrongness, like I was standing at the edge of something enormous, something that wanted to be seen but couldn't show itself fully. After that, I started noticing the patterns. Room 402 was used mostly for final moments. Every time I went in there for last rites, something felt off. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just wrong. I'd smell a hint of something metallic in the air. The overhead lights would flicker, not all at once, just faintly, like they were breathing, and the patient, if they were even semi-conscious, would look to the same corner, the far right of the room, never left, never center, always the right. One night, I stayed late. I told the staff I was going to meditate in the chapel, but instead, I sat in 402, alone, lights dimmed, door closed. I didn't say a word. I just sat in the corner chair, staring at the empty bed. After an hour, I heard the faintest whisper, not in my ear, not in the room. It came from the chart, the clipboard hanging at the foot of the bed. A soft rustle, like pages turning. I got up, checked. The chart was blank. The last entry was from earlier that afternoon. But on the inside of the back page, in red ink, someone had written, "He knows you can't protect them." I took it to the nurse's station. No one claimed to have written it. The ink didn't match any pens at the desk. I didn't press further. I just asked them to rotate patients to other rooms if possible. For a while they did, but rooms fill up. Death doesn't wait. 2 months ago, Margaret's daughter came back to visit the staff. She told me something I haven't been able to forget. She said Margaret had been talking in her sleep, the night before she died, muttering about a man with no mouth, about the one who stands behind. She said she thought her mother was just hallucinating. I agreed. I told her that was common in end-of-life states. I lied, because I had started dreaming about him too. In the dream, I stand in 402. The window's open, but no air moves. The bed is always empty, but the room isn't. There's something standing in the corner, tall, featureless, just a silhouette. I can't see his face, but I know he's watching. I try to speak, but I can't. I feel the prayer caught in my throat, like a thorn. And then I wake up, mouth dry, heart pounding, fingers clenched into fists around the hem of my bedsheet, like I'm clinging to scripture. I asked the maintenance team to inspect the room, electrical, structural, anything. They said the wiring was outdated, but nothing dangerous. One of the workers made a joke about it being haunted. I didn't laugh. Last week, they cleared out room 402, turned it into storage. Official reason, too many equipment issues. Unofficially, I think they knew something wasn't right. I still pass it sometimes. The door stays closed now. No nameplate, no scent of lavender, just silence. But when I get close, I swear I hear breathing. Not mine, not anyone else's. Just soft, deep inhalations, like someone patiently waiting for the next visitor. Or maybe, for me, I've begun to pray differently, quieter, slower, not because I've lost my faith, but because I'm beginning to understand that some places don't need exorcism. They need acknowledgement. Not every spirit wants to be cast out. Some just want to be heard, and that scares me more than anything else, because I've started to wonder, what if room 402 isn't haunted by death? What if it's haunted by everything we didn't say before it? And what if that silence is starting to answer back? There's a strange quiet in places meant for newborns. It's not peace, it's the kind of silence that asks, where is the crying? Dust moves like breath across the floor, and light filters through stained glass that hasn't been cleaned in years. It paints the room in soft pastels, lavender, peach, pale blue, like a lullaby that's been forgotten. The baptismal font still sits in the center of the room, unused and cold. The lid is cracked, the basin is dry. They sealed this part of the hospital years ago. Technically, the psychiatric mother-baby unit still exists, but no one talks about it. Most of the patients are transferred before delivery now, if they're stable. If they're not, they go somewhere else, somewhere without pastel walls or quiet lullabies. I'm Sister Madeline. I'm 51. I never took full vows, but I've served in spiritual care for most of my life, especially with mothers and infants. I came here after losing my own child, a long time ago. Miscarriage, no burial, just silence. I thought maybe I could help other women find peace, or at least not be alone. I used to spend hours in the neonatal chapel, offering blessings to the bassinets, baptisms when requested, prayers when needed. But after the closure, they locked the chapel doors, said it wasn't sanitary, said it wasn't safe. But I still had the key. It was early spring when I first went back. I had a dream the night before of a woman in a hospital gown walking barefoot through a foggy hallway, holding something swaddled in her arms. I couldn't see its face. She walked past me, then stopped and whispered, "He won't stop crying." When I woke up, my chest hurt, like I'd been holding my breath all night. I felt compelled, drawn to the chapel. The door creaked when I opened it. The air smelled stale, metallic. The basin of the font was filled, but not with holy water. Ash, thick and clinging, like someone had burned paper and poured the soot inside. I reached in before I thought better of it. It was cold but soft, almost velvety. As I pulled my hand out, I noticed tiny footprints across the dusty tiles, small, bare, uneven, like a child had walked in circles and vanished. The crucifix on the wall had turned slightly, no longer centered above the font. I adjusted it. It shifted back the next time I visited. I began returning every evening, just after sunset. I didn't tell anyone. It became a kind of ritual. Clean the font, straighten the cross, light a candle, pray. But each morning, the ash returned. The The footprints grew, and sometimes I'd find the pew cushions torn or soaked through without any water leaking from above. One night, I heard humming, faint, a lullaby I didn't recognize, though something about it twisted my stomach. I followed the sound to the back of the room, where a small storage closet used to hold prayer books. Inside, the shelves were empty, but on the floor, there was a doll, hand-stitched, faceless, one arm missing. It had been burned around the edges. I left it there. A week later, she appeared. I was kneeling at the font when I saw her in the mirror above the candle table. A young woman, mid-20s, pale, barefoot. Her hospital gown was stained, and her hair hung like soaked thread. She was cradling something in her arms, rocking gently. She didn't speak right away, just stood there, swaying. I rose slowly, afraid to startle her. "Can you baptize him?" she asked, voice barely audible. I stepped closer. "Of course. Is your baby sick?" She looked down at her arms. There was nothing there, just empty hands curled around air. "He fades if I don't," she whispered. "He doesn't like being forgotten." The font bubbled. I turned, and for a moment I saw movement, like something just beneath the ash, a shape that trembled and sank again. I looked back. She was gone. I searched the hospital records for hours that night. I knew better than to mention it to the staff, but I asked around casually. No recent deaths in maternity, no missing patients, but I did find an incident report from 2006. A woman, Anna L., admitted to the psychiatric unit while pregnant. Postpartum psychosis. Her baby died in the nursery. She refused to let go of the body. They said she carried a blanket for days, rocking it, feeding it empty bottles, humming lullabies in the hallway. She hung herself in the chapel. They sealed it the next day. I didn't sleep for days. I began dreaming of babies crying, not wailing, but soft, almost muffled, like they were under blankets or under floors. I'd wake to my arms cradling air, fingers curled around nothing. I started bringing a rosary with me at all times, clutching it until my knuckles went white, and still the ash returned. One night, I tried to cleanse the font properly. I brought a bottle of holy water, blessed by Father Eerie himself. I poured it into the ash, said every rite I knew, every prayer I could remember. The ash hissed. A scent like scorched milk filled the room. The candles went out. The doll was on the altar. Its missing arm had returned. I ran. I told myself I'd never go back, that I'd report the room, have it demolished, whatever it took, but I couldn't, because the next morning there was ash on the hem of my habit. I hadn't worn it into the chapel. I started seeing her again, in reflections, in corners, in dreams. Always the same question, "Can you baptize him?" I never answered, until the last time. I brought a small bowl of water, a silver spoon, and a white cloth. I waited until the chapel felt ready, until the silence turned expectant, and then I said the words, slowly, carefully. I didn't use a name. I didn't ask for one. I just prayed. As I sprinkled the water into the font, the ash began to dissolve. Thin wisps of smoke curled up, and I felt something pass through me, cold, heavy, then gone. When it was over, the font was empty. The footprints remained. I don't know if I helped her, or if I did something worse, but the dreams stopped. I still go to the chapel sometimes. Not every day, just when the air in the hospital feels too heavy, when the cries return to the edges of hearing. The doll's gone. The crucifix no longer moves, but sometimes when I open the door, I see a faint impression in the pews, like someone's been sitting there rocking, and every so often, I find the rosary I wore the day I miscarried, curled neatly on the altar. I haven't touched it in years. Some prayers don't lift us, some keep us tethered, and some, I've learned, become something else entirely. The wood creaks not from use, but from memory. Even when the booth is empty, it smells of sweat and old breath, like secrets never fully exhaled. The varnish has long since worn away from the armrests, and if you listen closely, really listen, you can hear a faint ticking inside the walls, like a clock buried too deep to tell time anymore. The confessional stands at the edge of the psychiatric observation ward. Not many use it, fewer still believe in what it offers, but it remains, tucked between two faded murals and a defunct vending machine that once sold religious tracts and ginger mints. I'm Father Caleb. I'm 39. I've been serving as spiritual counselor here for 6 years. I rotate between the geriatric wing, the general floor, and psycha. I try not to stay in one place too long. Too many stories cling to your skin if you stand still. I used to believe confession could cleanse a soul. Now I think it might just relocate the dirt. The first time I met Edgar, he came to me shaking. He was in his 50s, a hospice orderly, with pale skin and nervous eyes that flicked between corners like he expected something to crawl out of them. He didn't sit across from me in the booth. He knelt, said it felt more honest. His confession began like so many others. Small sins, lost tempers, stolen pills. Then it shifted. He spoke about the patients, how some died too quickly, how some whispered things before passing, things they couldn't possibly know. She watches through the curtains, he said. The blue ones in room 9. You know them? I did. That room had been sealed for asbestos repair 2 years ago. Edgar came back every Wednesday, like clockwork, always the same booth, always the same kneeling position, and each time his words grew darker. They follow me home, he said once. They stand at the foot of my bed. They mouth prayers with their throats open. I don't think they ever really died. At first, I chalked it up to psychosis, delusions, but there was something in his voice, some fragile edge of reality that made me uneasy. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was pleading. Then, one morning, he whispered, I buried them beneath the chapel. I asked him who. The ones who didn't stay dead, he replied. The ones who kept asking for help after they stopped breathing. I filed a report. It vanished. The hospital didn't want attention. Edgar was transferred to inpatient psych. The confession stopped. 2 weeks later, he was found in the chapel, hanging by an IV line from the rafters. The note they found in his pocket had only 3 words, not forgiven yet. After that, I avoided the confessional. For months, I told myself it was just grief or burnout. I prayed in the chapel instead, said my rosary in the stairwells, anywhere but that booth. But then I noticed something strange. The confessional door started swinging open, at odd hours, locked when I left it, unlatched when I returned. The walls inside began to warp slightly, dark streaks running down the grain like tears. I wiped them away more than once, but they always came back. One night, just past midnight, I passed by and heard whispering, faint, just enough to pull me in. The lights in the hallway flickered. I stepped inside. The booth was damp, not wet, damp, like it had been sweating in the dark. I sat down slowly, heart already racing. Is someone there? I asked. Silence. Then from the other side, a voice barely above a breath. You knew. I froze. It wasn't Edgar's voice. It was higher, thinner, almost childlike. I pulled back the screen. The other side was empty, but there was something pinned to the wood. A photo. My photo. Old. From seminary. A younger me, smiling, naive. Below it scrawled in red pen. You knew. I staggered out of the booth. My knees buckled. I vomited in the hallway trash can and didn't return until morning. I filed another report. This one went nowhere too. That's when the dreams began. I'd find myself back in the booth, but not alone. The curtain would sway even when there was no wind. The voice would begin whispering a confession, not sins, but questions. Why didn't you stop him? Do you think listening is enough? What good is a gatekeeper when the gates are already open? I woke each time, soaked in sweat, hands gripping my bed sheets like a lifeline. I tried to bless the confessional. I anointed the door with oil, whispered Psalm 23, lit a candle. The flame blew out, not extinguished, reversed, like it was being inhaled. One afternoon, I found prayer cards tucked into the booth. None from our chapel. All were dated from a different hospital, one that burned down years ago. The cards were damp, smelled like mildew and iron. I started to believe I was losing my mind, that perhaps I had absorbed too much, carried too many burdens, not my own. They teach us to listen, not to internalize. But no one tells you what to do when the voices don't leave. They cling. I considered leaving the priesthood. For the first time in my life, I truly did. Not because I lost faith in God, but because I started to wonder if something else had taken up residence inside my vocation. Something that used confession not to cleanse, but to trap. I began to dread hearing the booth creak open. Sometimes I'd walk by and see the red light, meant to indicate the booth was in use, glowing softly, even when no one was inside. Sometimes I'd hear two voices, both whispering the same prayer, one ahead, one behind, and sometimes I'd see shadows pass behind the booth wall where no one could stand. I still perform confession, not always in that room, sometimes in corners of quiet gardens or side rooms with windows and light, but never in the booth after dark, never alone, because I'm not sure anymore that absolution is ours to give. And I've begun to wonder, when people confess in places like that, who else is listening? Is it really forgiveness they're asking for, or is it permission? The confessional still stands. They haven't moved it. No one suggested removing it. Some things stay where they are, not because they belong, but because no one wants to disturb what might be sleeping inside. I dust it every Sunday, just once, lightly, enough to say I acknowledge it, enough to keep it from forgetting me, because there are stories in the wood now, and when it weeps I weep too, not out of fear, but because I'm not sure anymore which one of us is doing the confessing. Water shouldn't hum. Pipes should rattle. Hiss, knock, but not hum. Not like this. Not like a low, throaty sound that slips under your skin and stays there. Down in the hospital basement, beneath the weight of 1,000 lives and deaths, the pipes hum with something I can't name. I came here for silence. Not the comforting kind, but the punishing kind. The kind that lets you sit with your guilt and hear it echo. My name is Brother Thomas. I'm 58. I was moved to this hospital after I had what they gently called a break during my time with the prison ministry. I called it something else, a reckoning. They said I needed peace, stillness. So they gave me basement duty, laundry, waste disposal, supply restock, down where the living rarely visit, where the dead are stored just a corridor away, and where the walls don't echo, they absorb. The first time I saw the rosary in the drain, I thought it had fallen from my own pocket. Black beads, tarnished crucifix, chain twisted into a loop like it had snagged on something. I picked it up, dried it off, placed it in my locker. The next morning, it was gone. Later that day, I found it again. Same spot, wedged into the grate beneath the industrial sink. I was sure I hadn't dropped it. I checked my own rosary. Still in my breast pocket. The beads were warm. The one in the drain was ice cold. I threw it out. It came back. 3 days in a row. Always in the same place. Always with the crucifix turned upside down. I asked around. No one claimed it. Then I started hearing the voice. Not loud. Not even clear. A whisper coming from inside the pipes when the machines were off. A woman's voice. Rhythmic. Repeating something. At first I thought it was a prayer. Then I realized it wasn't in any language I knew. But I understood the intent. Please let me forget. That's what it felt like. A plea. A cry so old and tired it no longer needed words. The nights grew worse. Dreams came heavy and wet, like drowning. I'd find myself standing waist deep in a flooded laundry room, the rosary wrapped around my fingers like a snake. Behind me, someone would whisper my name, soft, regretful. I'd wake with my hands clenched, fingernails digging into my palm, beads under my fingers that weren't there when I opened my eyes. I tried ignoring it. That worked for exactly 2 days. Then the machine started acting up. The rinse cycles wouldn't stop. The drains overflowed, always in the same corner. One day I slipped and cracked my shoulder against the dryer door. As I lay there, dazed, the humming in the pipes grew louder. It sounded almost like chanting. I was raised to believe that evil announces itself boldly, horns and sulfur and red eyes. But here, it was just a hum, a forgotten prayer, a whisper that returned every time I tried to leave it behind. One evening, after a long shift, I followed the sound. I don't remember deciding to. I just walked, past the laundry bins, past the boiler room, past the locked door to the old incinerator, down a hallway I hadn't been assigned to clean in months. The air was thick, too warm. The lights flickered like they were gasping. There, at the end of the hall, I saw her, a woman standing barefoot on the wet tile, gown soaked to the knees, hair plastered to her face. Her eyes were gone, just sunken hollows that wept black water. But her mouth moved, slowly, silently. She held out her hand, in her palm the rosary. It dangled from her fingers, then dropped, landed in the water with a soft splash, and then she was gone. The hallway went dark. I turned and ran. When I reached the main basement floor, everything was quiet, too quiet. I checked the sink. The rosary was there, waiting. I stopped sleeping after that. Couldn't close my eyes without hearing the pipes. Couldn't walk the floor without catching a glimpse of her in reflections, in puddles, in the warped shine of the metal bins. I started bringing salt, chalk, holy water, things I hadn't used since my early training. I drew crosses on the drain grates, whispered blessings over the machines. It didn't help. One night, I found my locker open. The rosary was inside, not on the shelf, inside my spare shirt, coiled neatly like it had been folded into the fabric. That was the first night I cried, not out of fear, out of guilt, because I'd seen her before. Not clearly, not like that, but in pieces, years ago, during prison visits. She had been part of the janitorial crew, quiet, always mopping near the chapel, never spoke. She was there the day I lost my temper, the day I screamed at one of the inmates for mocking scripture, the day I threw my own rosary at the ground in rage. She watched. I never spoke to her, never noticed her again. A month later, she killed herself in the prison chapel. They found a rosary clutched in her hands. Not mine, but familiar. They said she left no note, but maybe she didn't need to. Maybe the pipes remember. I've come to believe that some spaces hold more than water and heat. They hold echoes. They carry sorrow through the walls like blood through veins. And when something is left unresolved, something sacred and broken, it finds its way to the lowest place, the basement, where the weight of everything above presses down. I still work here, still fold sheets, still sweep the floors, but I've stopped trying to throw the rosary away. Now I place it on a small hook beside the sink. I let it dry. Sometimes it vanishes, sometimes it returns, but I no longer pretend I don't know why. I say a prayer each morning, not for protection, for forgiveness, because I think that's all she ever wanted, to be seen, to be heard, to not be mopped away like a stain on tile. I don't know if she'll ever rest, but the humming in the pipes has softened, and when I hold the beads now, they're warm, not like fire, like memory, and that, I've learned, is almost the same thing. There's a strange way the wind moves through the parking garage. It's too low to be heard from the patient rooms, but down here, it's constant, a soft sighing draft that never stops. It comes through even when the gates are closed, even when no cars are around. Like the building itself is breathing, like something underneath it all is still alive. My name is Father Lucian. I'm 72. I've served as a hospital priest for almost 4 decades, but I only started taking night duty in the last 2 years. After my heart surgery, I requested the change, said I needed the quiet, but the truth is, I no longer trusted myself around dying patients, not because I lacked compassion, but because I started seeing the living the same way I see the dead. Down here, it's different. The living don't visit the garage after hours. It belongs to something else. A half-lit purgatory of concrete and shadows where nothing truly rests. I started my rounds like always. Prayers for the janitors, small talks with the night guards, silent meditations in the chapel before midnight. But that evening, as I passed the north stairwell, I saw someone sitting on the lower steps, hood up, head down, hands clasped like they were praying. I thought it was a staff member taking a smoke break, but as I approached, I smelled no smoke, only something cold and old, like dust from a sealed room. I cleared my throat. "You okay, son?" The figure didn't move, didn't even flinch. "I'm Father Lucien," I said gently. "If you need to talk, I'm here." Finally, the head turned just slightly enough for me to see part of a cheek, pale as paper. And then he whispered, "It's not me, it's her." I stepped back, startled. "Who?" He raised one arm and pointed down the stairwell, toward the sublevel. The restricted parking tier no longer in use, flooded during the storm 5 years ago, closed ever since. "She doesn't know she died," he said. "She thinks it's still her shift." Then he vanished. I don't mean he got up and walked away. I mean he wasn't there anymore. One blink and the stairwell was empty. I stood there a long time, staring at the dark. When I finally descended, the air grew colder. The lights were still on, though dim and flickering. The door to the sublevel was padlocked, but someone had removed the bolts, fresh scratches on the metal, like it had been forced open recently. I hesitated, then pushed it open. The sublevel smelled of mildew and rust. Most of the cars were long gone, except one, an old hospital shuttle bus, half covered by a torn tarp, its windows fogged from the inside. The lights above it buzzed faintly. As I stepped closer, I heard the sound of a pager beeping, then a voice, faint, crackling through static. "Code blue, north stairwell. Code blue, north stairwell." That pager system hadn't worked in years. I turned to leave and saw her, a nurse standing by the shuttle, clipboard in hand. Mid-30s, dark hair in a bun, scrubs wrinkled like she'd worn them too long. She looked exhausted. She looked real. "Ma'am," I said, stepping forward. "Are you all right? You shouldn't be down here." She looked up slowly. Her eyes were dark, not with color, but with weight, like she hadn't slept in days. "I'm waiting for the patient transport," she said. "There's no transport coming," I replied. "This level's been closed." "I can't leave," she said. "They're waiting. I promised I'd take them upstairs." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment I heard something else behind it. Not a patient, not a hallway. A scream, faint and buried beneath time, but unmistakably human. She turned and walked to the shuttle, opened the back door, and stood aside, like she was holding it open for someone. I didn't see anything inside, but I felt something move past me, cold, heavy, sorrowful. She shut the door. "They're not ready yet," she whispered, "but I'll keep trying." I wanted to ask her name. I wanted to pray for her, but she was gone. The next morning, I returned with 2 security guards and a hospital administrator. The sublevel was locked again. The shuttle wasn't there. No record of any vehicle being stored down there. No logs. No damage to the padlock. They said I must have wandered into a dream. Suggested I take a few nights off, rest. I didn't argue, but I didn't stop. Every few nights, I visit the stairwell. I leave a prayer card on the bottom step. Sometimes it's there in the morning. Sometimes it's not. Once I found a clipboard where the card had been. On it, a patient log from 1998. 3 names, all marked, transported, never arrived. I tried to trace them. Nothing in the hospital's database. But I found a news clipping in the archives. A shuttle accident during a night shift. Shuttle submerged in the sublevel garage during a flash flood. Driver survived. Passengers did not. The driver's name was Evelyn Harper, nurse, 34, last seen trying to pull patients from the shuttle before it was fully submerged. Her body was never found. Some believe she made it out and disappeared. I believe she never left. She stayed in the garage, in the stairwell, in the shuttle, waiting for a transport that would never come. I started lighting candles for her, not in the chapel, but down there, one each week, left at the base of the shuttle sign that's no longer mounted. Sometimes when I return, the candle is still burning, even days later. Other times it's gone, with only a faint scent of lavender and rust. I don't know if she sees me. I don't know if she hears the prayers, but I offer them anyway, because maybe that's what she's waiting for. Not to be rescued, not to be remembered, but to be released. Some souls, I've learned, don't need last rites when they die. They need them after, for the parts of them that stayed behind, still doing their job, still showing up for shifts no one scheduled, still waiting in the dark, for someone to tell them it's okay to stop, it's okay to rest, it's okay to leave. Sometimes the living carry more death than the dead, and sometimes the only thing we can do is whisper one final blessing to those who never stopped trying, even after the silence came,